Today on the Lazy RPG Talk Show, we're going to dig into the latest Sly Flourish news. Daggerheart has a new system reference document in Markdown. There's a new Grim Hollow bundle of holding, a Deadlands Humble Bundle, the Game Master's Book of Humble Bundle, Tales of the Valiant Handbook 2 Kickstarter going on. We're going to look at Horizons Issue 3. There's a new D&D 2014 to 2024 conversion guide we're going to take a poke at. A few articles and videos I think are worth your attention, including 10 Cult Powers by Evan Rash and Corridor Themes by Justin Alexander. I have a new 5e artisanal database that I'm going to show off for patrons today. We're going to look at super high technology for you to make your RPG better, the high technology of the text file. And we're going to cover more questions from the Patreon Q&A, all today on the Lazy RPG Talk Show. I'm Mike Shea, your pal from Sly Flourish, here to talk about all things in tabletop role-playing games. Happy Pride Month! Today is June 1st, the first day of Pride Month. I want to thank everybody for making our hobby so awesome and inclusive and diverse. Special thanks to our LGBT creators out there who are making awesome games, helping enrich the whole hobby across the incredible spectrum of different games that we have. We see you, we love you, and we love your participation in our wonderful hobby. Thank you all so much, and happy Pride Month to everybody. Last week, we had an article about leaving blanks called Leave Blanks, how to leave parts of your prep open so that players can fill it in with their own ideas. The article came out on slyflourish.com, where you can see it right now. It also came out as a newsletter. If you want an article like this to show up in your inbox, please sign up for the newsletter. Absolutely free to sign up. You get the article every week. And for patrons, for Hero Tier patrons, I did my Readings and Reflections podcast where I read this article so you can listen to it in your car or while you're mowing the lawn or whatever, and gave some more thoughts on it, right? Some deeper thoughts. So the Readings and Reflections podcast is a short 10-minute podcast. About 3 minutes of me reading the article and then 7 minutes of me pondering it. Where did it come from? What are some other ideas? What sort of comments? So oftentimes I get email from people talking about the article, and some of those I talk about some of that feedback in Readings and Reflections. You can get that by becoming a patron of Sly Flourish and a Hero Tier patron for Readings and Reflections. Next week's article is about hanging on loosely. How do we hang on a little less tightly to the rules of our RPG or systems or subsystems, and instead use the basic conflict resolution, the conversations we have with our players, and the conflict resolution systems of rolling a die and seeing what the results are, depending on whatever system you're running. We talk a lot about that in this article on Hang On Loosely. Best way to get the article is to subscribe to the newsletter. Again, link down in the show notes, absolutely free to sign up. And when you do, you get the article sent right to your inbox every week. It'll also be up on Sly Flourish. And of course, I will do Readings and Reflections for that on Thursday. City of Arches has now, for all of the backers of City of Arches, all of the physical versions are out there. They're all out across the world. Everybody in the United States should have gotten yours. So if you did not get your copy of City of Arches and you live in the United States or North America and you're waiting to get a copy, please email support@slyflourish.com so we can make sure you get your copy. For the rest of the world, they are all out the door. I know folks in Great Britain have gotten some. I think some folks in EU and Europe have gotten them. I don't know who else has gotten everything yet, and it can take a while. So what we ask is that by the end of June, if you have not gotten your book by the end of June, or you know something went haywire, email support@slyflourish.com, and again, we will check. We can see where the orders are. We can see what happened. Try to make sure that we figured out so that you can get the book that you paid for on the Kickstarter. You guys helped make this book happen by backing it on Kickstarter. We want to make sure you get the book. That everybody else at this point should probably have it. Because all of them are out the door, City of Arches is now available for purchase worldwide. So you can now go to the Sly Flourish bookstore. You can go to City of Arches, and any of the regions, I wouldn't say totally worldwide. There's a few regions where there's no effective way for us to ship them there. But generally speaking, anybody can get a copy of the hardcover version of City of Arches on the Sly Flourish bookstore. Links to that are in the show notes. And if you purchased the PDF on our web store previously and were not able to get the hardcover version, but you wanted the hardcover version, you can email us at support.slyflourish.com. Let us know who you are so we can look you up, and we can give you $20 off the hardcover version to account for the fact that you already bought the PDF. That way you can kind of upgrade your purchase from the PDF to the PDF and hardcover version, and we will give you that coupon so you can get that discounted rate for the hardcover book. And again, that is available to everybody in North America and Europe. And well, North America and worldwide, anybody that we can ship them to, we are available to that. So please email support@slyflourish.com. It's a bad week for Michelle. Not a bad week, but Michelle's going to get a lot of email. Michelle generally handles all of our support queries, and my beautiful wife, Michelle. And unfortunately, we have so many different things going on that we have multiple paths for people to send her email, because the next one is along the same lines. Lazy DM's Companion. So I have been going back. I'm slowly going back through the back catalog of Sly Flourish books and converting them from just PDF or PDF and EPUB to also include Markdown versions. So here is the Lazy DM's Companion, all converted to Markdown. In the introductory text, all of the different tables, all of the different charts, all of the rules available in Markdown. So if you want resources to help you run your games, you want tables, scenario ideas for running your own adventures, all the pitches and everything like that, all of that stuff is now available both in Markdown and EPUB. There wasn't previously an EPUB version of the Companion. It took me a whole day to do the conversion from the HTML export that Scott Gray gave me of the Lazy DM's Companion InDesign files, which is what we use to create the PDFs, put them into Markdown. How do you get this? So if you have previously purchased or received access to the Lazy DM's Companion on DriveThruRPG, you should have gotten a notification that there was an update, unless you opted out. If you opted out, you're not going to get the update. But you can go take a look in your DriveThruRPG library and download it. That should cover anybody that added to the library from the Kickstarter from before, or if you bought it there later, you can get that updated version. I also sent an email to everybody that bought it on the Sly Flourish web store, but that is as many people as I can reach. So if you own a PDF version of the Lazy DM's Companion that you bought from either you got through the Kickstarter, maybe you got it through our bundle of holding. I think we did it in a bundle of holding. I don't know if we did it in a bundle of holding. But if you got access to it any other way and you did not know about this and you were like, hey, I would love to get the Markdown and EPUB version of the Lazy DM's Companion, send an email to support@slyflourish.com with some kind of proof that you had purchased or backed or whatever the previous version of the City of Arches, and we can send you a new version that not only includes the EPUB version and the Markdown version, but also includes a new no background version of the PDF. So if you like to have a sort of a PDF that's easier to print or reads a little bit easier on a screen, we have a no background version of the Companion that was added as well. Any future purchaser, if you buy it today, you will get that version of it. You'll get the version that includes two different versions of the PDF, EPUB, Markdown, and of course all the digital assets. So you have maps and images that are included in the Lazy DM's Companion so that you can use them in your own games. So it's hard work doing it, but really effective. I love it. I love to have this in a format that reads well on a phone. You know, the ebook reads well in an ebook reader on your phone. The Markdown version works well if you're using something like Obsidian on your phone. So that is the Lazy DM's Companion over in Markdown and EPUB. So really fun to do. Speaking of Markdown, I guess we're going right back down to the Markdown page. Daggerheart, the system reference document for Daggerheart is available in Markdown as well. So this is one of the real advantages when companies put out system reference documents for their RPG systems. And Daggerheart they did it right away. I think they released it the same time the book came out. And because of the license they have, people are able to convert it into other formats. And somebody converted it into Markdown and put it up on GitHub. Fantastic. You can download your own copy in Markdown. I did. Let's take a look. We can go back to Obsidian again. Obsidian is the tool that I use to kind of read Markdown files and look at Markdown files, and we have the Daggerheart SRD. So it's broken down. You have all the adversaries, which are like all the monsters that are available in Daggerheart, ancestries, all of the different ancestry information. So they really broke it down. Classes and class descriptions are here. I don't know if these links work. Wow, the links work. They have internal links that work. That's cool. Different domains, environments, mechanics. All the mechanics, I think, are all of the general rules, subclasses. So all of it is broken down in this Markdown file. So it's a great way to have like a reference of all of Daggerheart in a format that is easy for you to read. Again, you can pull up rules on your phone. If you have a Markdown reader, you can read it. So I think that's really cool. So that's the Daggerheart, the Daggerheart system by Darrington Press is available in Markdown, which I think is really cool. You can find a link down in the show notes. Download it. Download your own copy. Save it. Put it in your 3-2-1 backup system so that you don't lose a copy. That's what I love about this, right? One of the things I love is that they're there, but we don't have to count on it being there forever, right? We can download our own copy and have our own copy locally that we know will be around even as the world changes around us. Lots of different deals currently going on in the world of tabletop role-playing games. Grim Hollow, made by Ghostfire Gaming, has a new bundle of holding, the Grim Hollow 2021 Campaign Guide, Player's Guide, and Monster Grimoire for $18. So a pretty good deal. What is that? About $6 a copy, right? So if you are looking at Grim Hollow, a grim and dark 5e setting, including a Player's Guide, Monster's Guide, and the Campaign Guide for $6 each. So one thing to consider with this is they are working on, and I don't remember what the status is. I don't remember if there is a Kickstarter had happened or is happening or will happen for them to update all of this essentially for D&D 2024. Now, I presume also that they will go and they will fix a lot of these things. They'll fix these copies so that even beyond just converting to D&D 2024, there's probably other things that they're going to do to it as well. So if you want the latest version of Grim Hollow, then you might want to wait for that. Again, I don't remember where it is exactly, but I know that they are coming out with a new version of it. So that's something to keep in mind. But if on the other hand, and this is a way I often think about bundles of holding and humble bundles, is they're sort of experimental purchases that you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I just want to kind of see it. Well, I can tell you that Grim Hollow is really cool. The original Grim Hollow is really, really cool. Yeah, somebody brought up that this is $75 worth of stuff that you're getting for $20. So it's very, very good deal. And if you really just want to dig in and look at it, then this is a great way to dig in and look at it without having to buy the whole big $75 collection and PDFs in the first place. But if you think that this is something that you're definitely going to run and you have the means and the money's not that an issue to you, then you may want to hold off and wait until you're getting the new Grim Hollow 2024 versions of the campaign guides. But I've seen these. They have been great so far. So I guess they did fund. No, last October, they have a little note here. In anticipation of the D&D 2024 update, Ghostfire Gaming funded the updated Grim Hollow transformed versions of the Player's Guide and Monster Grimoire with delivery planned no sooner than November 2025. This offer represents the current 2021 version. So they're being straight about it, right? They want you to know, hey, there's new versions of these. I don't know if I worry about it. All right. I mean, again, it's easier for me to drop $18 on it, but if you want to take a look at it, $18 for the three books is a pretty good deal. So that is the Grim Hollow bundle of holding that is currently out. Deadlands. Deadlands is I think this is based on, Savage Worlds based RPG of kind of a fantasy, undead, Western style game. Very cool. I know my friend Teo Sabadia has been running a campaign in this, and they have a great big 85 items for $25. So, again, humble bundles and bundles of holding are some of the best deals you'll get in tabletop role-playing games. If you have any interest in this style of game, in the accessories it's got, humble bundles are a fantastic way to do it. One thing to keep in mind, like the 85 items is a little misleading because some items are like small adventures, some are like little tokens for VTTs, some are like one sheet adventures. So, and then of course like core books and things like that. So the core books is really where you're getting the highest value. But if you're interested, again, this is a great way to kind of take a look at a different system. Savage Worlds is a really cool system. I haven't played it very much. I'd love to play it more. Really, really neat stuff. So that is the Savage Worlds Humble Bundle, $25, 85 items. The biggest problem you have is figuring out how to download it all. They have other bundles as well. I haven't looked at these to see, do these have the core books in them? If they do have the core books, I don't think they do. And it doesn't look like the other bundles have the core books. So I would probably get the 85 item bundle for $25 because this one does come with the core books. Core ways to play the game. So really neat stuff. I just found this out this morning. There is a RPG. So the RPG Game Master book series is a series of books, different authors, lots of different RPG things. And when I recently did a poll on books that helped people, what are the books that help GMs really run games? These books came up often. Very popular books. I actually wrote the foreword to one of these. I think this book of Random Encounters. I am actually in the foreword of that, wrote the foreword to that book. $15 for 11 different books. Really, really good deal. Random encounters, non-playing characters, traps and puzzles, more random tables, more random encounters, cities and towns. This one got a lot of attention. The Game Master's Handbook of Proactive Role-Playing got a lot of attention from folks. Villains and minions and their tactics and legendary. Tons of stuff. $15, really good deal. I haven't bought this yet. I'm going to go buy it today. But a really cool list of stuff for a very, very low price. 11 books. These are really full books too. These are not like, hey, we got tiny little one-page things in there. These are all great, big, hefty books that have lots of information. I've checked them out. They're very cool. $15, fantastic deal. Best way to get this. Check out the RPG Game Master book series for $15 on Humble Bundle. In case you have any money left over after all that stuff, Tales of the Valiant, Kobold Press has launched the Tales of the Valiant. Tales of the Valiant has a new Player's Guide 2. They're doing well, 2,000 backers, $166,000, 26 days to go. And this is a book that fills out a lot of the character options that you can find in Tales of the Valiant. It's kind of like their version of Xanathar's, right? They have a whole bunch. And check this out. One-click preview. I love one-click previews. Thank you, Kobold Press. So if you want to see what it's got, you can check out, it's a 23-page preview of what the Player's Guide 2 is going to have. The Player's Guide, it shows all of the different subclasses. It looks like 3 additional subclasses per class. So at the end of this, if you have the Player's Guide, if you have the Adventurer's Guide 1 and Adventurer's Guide 2, you'll have a total of 5 subclasses for each class, which I think is like 5 times 12. So lots of different options for your characters. New lineages and heritage, Dampier, Elemental Scion, Goblins. I don't know what a Halamatato is. Sepovia, Shade, and Tuluski. Expanded lineage options, Beastkin and Ian. Variant lineages, Dwarf variant, Duergar, Drow, and Sea Elf. New heritages as well. New magic items and equipment. 100 new magic items are going to be in here. Base building rules, I'll be curious about that. New downtime activities expanded. So a lot of cool stuff that they have in this. Looks really good. And I feel like, I think my number one complaint, so I'm running a Tales of the Valiant campaign now. I'm actually running one in about an hour and a half. And probably the only complaint that I have is that I have several complaints. It's great. Don't get me wrong. I love Tales of the Valiant. I'm enjoying it thoroughly. I am running with only the Tales of the Valiant rules, and we're having a great time. So it's absolutely fantastic. One complaint that I had is that there was only 2 subclasses per class, which is a little limiting. It's not so bad if you're running like a 1-year game and then you're going to move on to a different system. There's enough options there to certainly run one campaign. But to run a series of campaigns, if you want to run this for a long time, you need to have more character options. I really like that D&D 2024 included 4 character options, 4 subclasses per class. That's a whole lot of subclasses, a whole lot of options. And really, when you add multi-classing, then you've got room forever. With the Player's Guide 2 in hand, now you've got 5 subclasses per class and a lot of different things. I think those 2 books side by side really makes Tales of the Valiant a deep and rich system that you can customize for your own table and your own group. I think that's really good. So I think I'm happy to see the Player's Guide 2, and I think when you have the Player's Guide 1 and 2 side by side, you have a lot of options for Tales of the Valiant. So looks really good. I'm definitely going to back it. They have a new class as well, a new I think they have multiple new classes, right? I think there's a new witch. There's 3, a witch, a theurge, and a vanguard class. So 3 whole new classes as well look in there that look really cool. So we're going to see. Looks really good. Looks interesting. I would definitely back it. I'm excited for it. You want to see what they have. You see what they offer. You can check out the 23-page preview. If you're not familiar with Tales of the Valiant itself and you want to learn more about Tales of the Valiant, you can do so for free by looking at the Black Flag system reference document, which talks a lot about Tales of the Valiant. You can also pick up multiple versions, Tales of the Valiant, multiple versions for multiple virtual tabletops, PDF, a hardcover version, and a softcover version. I actually have both the hardcover and the softcover version. So pretty neat. But yeah, check that out. That is the new Tales of the Valiant Player's Guide to Kickstarter going on right now. So it's been sitting on my desk a while, but Horizon magazine is made by Wildmage Press. It is a quarterly, really well done quarterly magazine. The senior editor is Hannah Rose, who worked on the MCDM magazine when that was going underway, called Arcadia. She took a lot of the stuff that she had done with Arcadia and moved it to this, where you can subscribe, and you should subscribe to pick up versions of Horizon. Horizon usually has about 4 or 5 articles a quarter. We're going to take a look at the recent one. I was just looking at it before the show. I didn't really have a chance to dig into it too much until right before the show. 45-page PDF in the magazine, beautiful layout. The Desk of Many Thoughts is actually an interview done with Brendan Lee Mulligan. So I haven't had a chance to read this interview yet, but I'm really excited to read this interview. There are 4 sort of content articles. One of them is a new warlock patron called the Crowd Patron, sort of a patron who is sort of a warlock who takes energy from the crowd around them. That looked pretty interesting. The Gilded Quill is sort of a location and sort of adventure scenario things built around a gambling den, like a casino style place. So it has NPCs, has sort of quest options there, kind of a cool drop-in casino. Beautiful art. Look at that. The art is fantastic. Really, really fun stuff there. So that is sort of this, look, the Altar of Skulls. Ooh, cool stuff. And then a whole bunch of different games, different sort of casino games that you can run. The Avenging Heart by Brandis Stoddard is a look at the Holy Avenger, and it presents storylines surrounding the Holy Avenger, including corrupted versions of the Holy Avenger that have to be sort of fixed in order to do it. So if you want to take this super iconic magic weapon from D&D and build out an entire story around it, The Avenging Heart is one of the essays in here, one of the articles in Horizon issue 3 that talks about it. Really cool artwork. And this shows like its transformation from a corrupted blade into an actual Holy Avenger. The artwork is really, really good. Deathmatch Atlantis. I saw this and I was like, I don't know what we're even talking about here. And that's because it's based on an RPG called Deathmatch Island, made by Fate, published by Evil Hat Games, who makes Fate. And I hadn't heard of it before, but it's sort of a Hunger Games style, sort of game show-esque RPG. And Deathmatch Atlantis is sort of a drop-in location and scenario for this game, Deathmatch Island, but I hadn't heard of. It was very funny because I was like reading the article and I'm like, I don't have any idea what this is, right? Like, I don't know what I'm even looking at. And the truth is it's about Deathmatch Island is the name of this game. The dystopian mystery battle royale is what they refer to it as. So there's a whole scenario for that. You can pick up Deathmatch Island over on Evil Hat Games. I haven't seen it. I haven't taken a look at it, so I'm going to do it. So that is Horizon issue 3. Very, very cool. Check it out. Subscribe to them. This is kind of the, a real high quality pinnacle magazine coming out from Wildmage Press. We also have, this past week, all of us received a new system reference conversion guide from Wizards of the Coast for converting between the 5.1 SRD and the 5.2.1 SRD. Boy, that sounds boring. Like, what is that? I don't even know what you're talking about, Mike. So 5.1 SRD is the open rule set of D&D 2014. Came out about 10 years ago. The SRD came out about 8 years ago, was released in the Creative Commons 2 years ago. And this document is essentially written for publishers who want to convert their previous material from D&D 2014 to D&D 2024. It's obviously in Wizards' best interest to get people to do their conversions, because then they can find the ones that they want to bring onto D&D Beyond, and all of the stuff is written in the same style as everything else as D&D Beyond. So there's definitely a drive to get them to convert your older stuff, like what Ghostfire Gaming was doing. Converting their old stuff to the new stuff helps Wizards of the Coast because they want to be able to put more stuff in D&D Beyond. And if you're interested in writing towards the newest version of D&D, then you can you can have this. But why I think this is particularly interesting is because it's a really good, direct way to see what the differences are between D&D 2014 and D&D 2024. What are some new rules? What are new names of things? What things have been revised from previous versions? This is a really good conversion guide. If you have players who are like, I got the new one, but I don't really know what all the things are. It's a dry read, right? It's meant as a reference document. It is not written in a prose that makes it super fun to read, but it's a really good reference guide to get an idea of hey, what has changed? How has Surprised changed from D&D 2014 to 2024? It shows you what material changed between the two versions, and that gives you sort of an idea of where does the compatibility lie and where does it not lie. It's really interesting to me. This brings up this whole question of compatibility. I have brought up my general opinion about the compatibility between D&D 2014 and 2024, which generally comes down to, if you squint, of course it's compatible, right? If you don't worry too much, if you let go a little bit and you don't quite get too wrapped around the Axelon stuff, it's compatible enough. If you take a D&D 2014 monster or a monster that was written around D&D 5e 2014 from any publisher and run it in your D&D 2024 game, it'll be fine. If you want to take some subclasses and convert them over, it might take a little bit of work, but you can do it. There's actually rules in the player's handbook for taking older subclasses and applying them to current classes. There's a lot of stuff like that. So are there areas that get weird? Yeah. Absolutely. But generally speaking, it's not that big a deal. But if you want to know the real specifics about what's changed, this is a really good guide to see what changed between D&D 2014 and D&D 2024. What are some of the new revised rules? And it gets all the way down to the class. Again, the 15-page PDF that covers it, available, of course, for free on the D&D Beyond website. I will link to it in the show notes. Download a copy, keep it with your SRDs. Of course, you've downloaded both SRDs, 5.1 SRD and the 5.2.1 SRD. So you have the 2014 rules, you have the 2024 rules, you have this, and you can keep it all on your desktop or on your computer with your 3-2-1 backup system so that you don't lose it, and that you can keep it forever. So that, anything happens in the future, you've got your copies, you got your local PDFs of these things. You have your copies, you're ready to go. So I think it's pretty interesting. I haven't dug through the whole thing and found I'm like, I never really thought about that. Like most of these kinds of things I've heard about, there's not a lot of things in here where I'm like, oh wow, I totally didn't recognize that. So yeah, I'm sorry. Now I'm lost. I'm like, now I'm kind of reading it and I'm kind of interested in what they've got going on here. Yeah, I like this. Capitalization, because they capitalize everything. It's like riding over speed bumps. They decided to capitalize everything. Get away from natural language rules and get into board game style rules was definitely a shift that they took with D&D 2024. Drives some people bananas. Other people don't really care. But they, for good or ill, here it is. A couple interesting articles and videos that I saw this past week that I thought were worth highlighting. One was 10 cult powers. How could I pass on an article about cult powers? Love me some cults as my bad guys. And this article, written by Evan Rash over on Foe Foundry, has 10 powers for cultist fanatics and false prophets. Kind of fun 5e abilities that you can drop onto your cultists if you have ideas. It's interesting. Wizards of the Coast had published some stuff like this in Morden Canaans, so that you can modify cultists by giving an additional power based on which dark deity they followed and stuff like that. But these are pretty cool. These remind me a lot of the monster powers that we have in Forge of Foes that you can sort of apply to a different monster. So I thought they were neat, and there's a whole list of them. You can find a link down to this in the show notes. They even have a new stat block for a CR10 Cult Grandmaster. So that looks pretty fun. So you'll find a link to that. That is over on Foe Foundry, 10 powers for cultist fanatics and false prophets. Justin Alexander, who very prolific author in the world of D&D and writer of So You Want to Be a Game Master, had a good video called 5 Minutes to a Better Dungeon. And the idea was this concept called corridor themes. And I watched it and I really liked the idea. I actually did it in a game right after I saw the video. I was like, let me try that out. And I like it because it fits in very nicely with a lot of the philosophies that I hold towards RPGs, which is the idea of sort of abstracting ideas from specifics in our game to help us build tools to improvise. So the concept of the video is that corridors are generally pretty boring. And if you have a dungeon, you often will key rooms of a dungeon, but you don't necessarily key the corridors between the rooms, and that makes them these general hallways, and they're really boring. And if, however, you were to turn those and describe those independently, you would double, oftentimes more than double the number of items that you had to fill out. And that's a pain in the ass, and it bloats up your whole write-up and everything like that. So what he suggested is instead you kind of write down a set of corridor themes. What are some general themes that you can write down that you could then associate with corridors and use as the players are going through them? I love this idea, and I love it because you don't have to write nearly as many themes as there are corridors, and you're not spending a lot of time detailing stuff that the players may never see because they're only going to go down one of the corridors, right? They're only picking one path. Generally speaking, they don't go through every single hallway of every single place. I think you can even abstract this a little further. And this is something that I do a lot of times when I'm doing a dungeon, which is I might just write down the themes for the whole place. I might not even write down room descriptions. I might just write down general themes of the kinds of things they might find. Like, what are the walls like here? What sort of iconography are here? It's very secret and clues style. It reminds me a lot also of the room aspects that I talk about in Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, the idea that you pick a room, but then you write 3 aspects that kind of generally describe it. It's almost like you're taking those aspects and separating them out so that you instead have this list of themes. Elizabeth over in our Discord server was talking about this previously. I think she asked me, I showed a picture of a map, and she had said, do you write down any of your themes? And I was like, not really, because they're kind of in my head. But now that I think about it, there's no reason not to write down those themes. And particularly if you have different regions of it, you might have themes. What are some just general ideas? Like if you have an underground grotto, you might have slimy walls and ancient primordial effigies, just writing down these sort of like lists of sort of things that they might find among these corridors or passageways and stuff like this. I do this for point crawls a lot. I will describe the different connections between points in point crawls so that people can kind of feel how a path is different than another path. But I think we could do that more. So it's a really good video. I highly recommend it. It's a really cool technique. Fits very much in the idea of helping yourself build, give yourself tools and do your prep to help you improvise during the game. That's the fundamental nature of Return of the Lazy Dungeon Masters. Prep less and prepare the stuff that helps you improvise your game is really like the number one thing. And this follows right along with that. So a really, really fantastic video. I have been working on a new project. So while City of Arches has been going out the door, while I've been waiting for that, I've been working on a few different things, including the City of Arches Key of World scenarios, which now are written. I'm editing them and then putting them out. I think we've done 10 of the 15 of those. And I decided, there's another idea that I'd kind of like to kick around. I have talked about the 5e artisanal monster database for a while. But what if instead of just monsters, we focused on some other things as well? We added a lot of other things. And the end result of that is something I am calling the 5e artisanal database. The 5e Artisanal Database is a general 5e set of rules, databases, tools, and generators to help you run 5e games. It includes Markdown and HTML versions of four different versions of 5e, including D&D 5.1, which is D&D 2014, the 5.2 SRD, which is D&D 2024, Black Flag by Tales of the Valiant, and Level Up Advanced 5e by Ian World Publishing. The rule sets here, you can click on and you can get the rules. You can go down to races, you can pick a race, and it has the descriptions of it all in here. Each of these are a little different. They're based on how the Markdown formatting went, but we have the 5.2 SRD. If you want the rules glossary, for example, you can go into the rules glossary and have a easy to view HTML version of the rules glossary in both HTML, but then you can click Markdown and get the whole thing in Markdown as well. The real value of this is that it is completely self-contained and downloadable. You can download a zip file, and that zip file you can unzip on your desktop and open in a browser, and you have a local version that you can use forever. You don't have to count on me keeping the website up. You can move it to systems. You can add it to your 3-2-1 backup procedures so that you can have this forever. It means you have all of these rule sets, all of these resources, all of these tools, all of the data always available to you no matter what. That is something that other major providers of this do not provide, is once you have your copy, you have it forever. Now, I'm still working on this. I've got a lot of work to do, but there was enough here that I was like, you know what? I think it's probably cool to release. A couple other resources that included was the Lazy GM resource document, which is my material released under a Creative Commons license. So this has like quest templates, zone-based combat, stress effects, all the different kinds of things that I have released under that license. And then the Lazy GM monster resource document, which is the Creative Commons release document that myself and Teos Abadia and Scott Gray released under Creative Commons. That is here as well. So you can read about lightning rods. You can, the Lazy Encounter benchmark, monsters and the tiers of play, right? What monsters you should find at tiers of play. All available here. And again, you can click on them and you can get the Markdown version of everything as well. So that's the rule sets. Databases, of course, we have monsters, right? The same as the 5e Artisanal Monster Database. It is all here. You could say Balor. We have 3 different Balors, the A5e Balor, the Black Flag Balor, and the 5.2 SRD Balor. I'm probably going to add the 5.1 stuff to this as well. This is 2,800 monsters. So this includes monsters from 2024 5.2 SRD, Level Up Advanced 5e, Tome of Beasts 1, 2, and 3, Creature Codex, and Black Flag. So we have lots of different options. But I think just for completeness, I'm probably going to put the 5.1 monsters in here as well, the original 5.1 versions of the monsters. Do we really need it? Maybe not, but it'll be nice to have it complete. And boy, it'll push the list to over 3,000 monsters. I also just recently added magic items. So here in magic items, you can type Vorpal Sword. Right? And right now, unfortunately, I only have them for Level Up Advanced 5e and the 5.1 SRD because there isn't... So all of this is pulling data from open5e.com. And open5e.com doesn't yet have 5.2 SRD magic items. And Black Flag is not available there yet either, which is kind of a bummer. So this is where it doesn't have everything, right? It's not complete, but I hope to, as the newer stuff gets added, it's easy for me to update this to add that kind of stuff. But you can still see the Level Up Advanced 5e version of a Vorpal Sword. And again, you can get it in Markdown. All that stuff is available here. And I want to do spells next. Spells is listed, but not hot. And that's because I haven't done spell set. It's actually going to take some time to get spells in there. So there's that. The dice roller, I threw my dice roll in here. My dice roller is a CC0 dice roller. Very, very, very simple dice roller that you can use to roll dice, roll custom dice. You want to do 24D10, bang, right? 24D10, 118. So that is a very simple dice roller that I released under a CC0 license. That is in here. I have a link out to the Dyson commercial map gallery. It's so big, I didn't want to include it inside the database because that would take it from, I think it's like 25 megabytes download to like 400 megabyte download. That's more than I wanted to do. So it links to the Dyson commercial map gallery. Forge of Foes monster stats, very simple device that says, hey, I want a CR10 monster, right? I want to make a CR15 monster. It gives you the Forge of Foes stats, plus it lists out different conditions, different things that you might want to add onto your monster. I created a new one. So one of the things I was like, what tools does it need? And one of the tools was like a token maker. So we now have a standalone downloadable token maker so that you can choose a file. I will pick, let's see. Here's a picture of me with one of our new tenants. We have 2 kittens that we are currently fostering, little babies, 1 pound. So you add the thing and you click download token and you get yourself a token, right? This is a ping. You can drop this right into a virtual tabletop and turn into a CR15 vicious 1 pound kitten named Chrysanthemum. We named him Chrysanthemum after the Wookiee because he looks kind of like Chrysanthemum. That's not the best picture. Let's choose another file. Let's see if this guy works. These are the 2. There's Chrysanthemum. You can make a Chrysanthemum token. You can change the ring color, right? And then you want to make one. This is Ruth. Vicious. I can tell you from the little scratches I have on my legs. Vicious. Let's zoom way in so it looks really sinister. There you go. All right. And you get nice VTT compatible tokens. This is all standalone. Does not reach back to a server. Whole thing operates just inside of your browser as the token maker. And then a bunch of random generators. NPCs. You want a bunch of different NPCs? Hammond Mudtooth, brash lizardfolk farmer with a missing tooth who dresses in mended clothes and wants to leave a bad scene. They want the characters to activate a monument, right? It gives you an NPC, names, descriptions, other things, and including a quest. You take what you want and you go. So we have NPCs. We have monuments, Dragonborn Opal Obelisk, or Giant Earthen Totem, or Shadow-Touched Radiant Cesspit. We have locations, Outer Planar Acidic Dungeon, Monsters Flooded Dungeon, Elven Unholy Shipwreck, right? Cool adventure locations. We have traps. We have relics, single-use relics, fairy defiled pipes that cast imprisonment, for example. Unique weapons, bestial floating dart that casts conjure celestials, giant bloody sling that casts mage hand. That's kind of funny. Unique armor. And then 2 treasure generators, the 2024 D&D treasure generator. So if you want treasure from D&D 2024, we've got that in here. And a Tales of the Valiant treasure generator. I'm still working on these 2. But you can generate treasure from both of those. That is the Artisanal database. This is available to patrons of Sly Flourish. Patrons get access to this right away. It is listed on your Patreon reward page. I'm probably going to put an email out about it this next week. Again, still a work in progress. I'll probably talk about it more as we add more features to it. But I really like the idea of like a fully complete 5e database, digital database that you can download, that you can own forever, built on open resources, completely legal, and helps you with all of the tools that you need in order to run your games. It's something that I'm going to use all the time. I've used many of these tools before, and I plan to use many of these tools again. You can learn all about the licensing. There is a licensing page here that talks all about the licensing for all the stuff that we have in it. So it follows multiple licenses, Creative Commons licenses, the Black Flag Open Game, the ORC license, and the OGL are all being used for different parts of this database. They're each licensed independently. Each of the pieces of this are independent. So if you're a patron of Sly Flourish, check out the Patreon rewards page. I just added it there this morning. You can find it there. And if you want to talk more about it or offer thoughts, not every feature can make it in here because, again, making it downloadable is really important. One last piece of this is you can download, when you download the whole thing, all of the Markdown file, this whole tool is actually static HTML. There's a little bit of JavaScript, obviously, but it's rendered all in static HTML, which means it's super, super fast. And when you download it, you have access to all the HTML, and the Markdown files are down there. So if you just want access to all the Markdown files for all the stuff, you can download the zip file, and each of the directories has a Markdown version. So you can say, like, I want all of the Black Flag monsters in Markdown just so I can drop them to Obsidian. You can totally do that. You have all that stuff is available in Markdown. So that is the 5e Artisanal Monster Database. I plan to continue to evolve this over time, but I wanted to show it off. I talked about the 5e Artisanal monster database. And it's actually built on a really powerful bit of high technology that you can use right now for your games. I want to dive into deep technology, super advanced technology. And that super advanced technology is text files. Text files are sort of the equivalent of an index card when it comes to value to our RPGs. They are like the digital version of an index card. They are super flexible. They are super cheap. They're super ubiquitous. They offer so much options and so much capability that I think it's worth us paying a little bit of extra respect to the text file. Text files, very simple idea. All computers have them. Right? All computers have text files. All computers use text files. All the computers can read text files. They are a near ubiquitous file format that has been around for 60 years. They have outdated pretty much any other file format that exists for computers. Back when ASCII was formatted as a standard is when text files formatted. And if you had text files from 60 years ago, on the assumption that you kind of moved them forward correctly, you would still be able to read them today. There's still a lot of like little standardy bits that exist, little problems, little barbs that you might run into from time to time. But generally speaking, text files are a ubiquitous way of transferring information from one system to another, and has done so for 60 years. They are incredibly small. They use up very, very little space. They're very easy to save. They're very easy to transfer. They're very easy to back up. They're very easy to convert. You can open them up in just about everything. Like, text files are so easy to use and so powerful. You don't have to worry about fonts. You don't have to worry about stylings. When you work with text files, you're just worried about text. You're just worried about your content. And yet they offer some extendability as well. They're totally cross-system compatible. There's little tidbits here, like why does Unix use one end thing for a carriage return? Windows uses another thing for a carriage return. But any text editor worth its salt has ways of converting things like carriage returns over from one system to another. Generally speaking, though, you're not going to lose your data. It's very easy to convert from one platform to another. I have been using text files, as long as I've been using computers, obviously. But for like RPG standpoints, I've been using them for a long time. When I write my articles for Sly Flourish, they are written as text files. When I write my game notes for my games, they are written as text files. We're going to get into Markdown in a minute, but really what Markdown is a text file. It's a formatting for a text file. That's all it really is. It's a style of a text file. And there's so many ways you can use text files for your RPGs. You can use them as a scratch pad during your game. When I run my games online, I have a text editor open and I have a text file there, and I just keep it open so I can write things down, right? I can just write down anything I need, names that have popped up during the game, all different kinds of things. I keep my game prep notes in a text file, and I can open them up in a text editor and read them. I keep track of marching order. When I'm running the game and I'm like, okay, who's up front? I keep a little text thing and I keep it in my text file and I can save it. And the cool bit there is I can copy it and then paste it into Discord so that people can see what the marching order is visually. That transfer of text file to other things, really, really powerful. Initiative. I use text files to manage initiative. I just put the number down there and then I move the line up and down, copy and paste and move the line, or cut and paste and move the lines up and down until we have the initiative order. I don't need any special tools. I don't need a special initiative tracking system. Text files, text editors, they work just fine. They work really well. Theater of the mind positioning. Actually, let's go back to Obsidian here. So in the Lazy DM's Companion, I have a chapter on playing D&D online, and one of the things I talk about is doing text-based combat tracking. This is the idea of using text to figure out where monsters are. That right-hand little image is a text file, right? That's the information you keep in a text file. You can use all caps in order to describe a location. Then you can do little dashes for characters. You can remove the dashes for monsters, and it shows you who is in what area. This is for like zone-based combat, right? Who is involved in zone-based combat. Another trick I've started doing is actually mixing my initiative, and then on the initiative line, I will also keep track of like damage done to monsters, so I know how much damage they've taken, and I can also write like which monsters are next to which characters or which zone they are connected to. So that way my initiative thing in my text editor has initiative, character names, monster names, damage done to monsters, and abstract positioning of characters and monsters to one another and to zones, all in one little area inside a text file. What you're looking at on the left actually is a text file, right? If I go to source mode, this is what it looks like in text because I'm using Obsidian over here. Obsidian reads Markdown files. Markdown files are text files. So it turns out all these deep down, when you get to it, are text files. I love text files so much. I want to talk more about them. So initiative, theater of the mind positioning, and after session notes. You can jot down your notes while you're playing the game. Just write things down, save it to your desktop, and then go back and clean things up. So now let's talk about Markdown. So what is Markdown? Markdown is a styling format for text files that allows other programs to be able to render them in a more document style way with headings, bolding and italicizing, lists, unordered and ordered lists, things of that nature. And this, by the way, what you're looking at here was written in a text file and then converted into Markdown. And that's why you have headers. So heading 1s, heading 2s, list items, bold. And it's all about very simple formatting. We'll actually go to these notes in Obsidian. So here's the same notes in Obsidian, and we will go to the source mode. Source mode shows what they look like. This is the styling. You put a pound sign at the beginning, you create an H1, 2 pound signs is an H2, and so on. You could do H3s, H4s, and so on. If you do just a little hyphen, I like to use a hyphen, but you can also use a star space. But if you use a hyphen space, that creates a list item. When it rendered in Markdown, it does lists. Double stars next to something bolds it. A single star italicizes it. And you can link stuff by putting brackets and parentheses. I'll link down to a Markdown, sort of a definition of different Markdown formatting. And then you have ordered lists. Ordered lists, you just do 1 dot and then the first one, 2 dot and then the next one. And something that can render Markdown will make it look nice in a Markdown renderer. So Obsidian, which I've talked about before on the show, Obsidian is a powerful Markdown document system, right? It's sort of like a big notepad, a big fancy notepad where you can have lots of different documents. You can link those documents together and you can write it all. And underneath Obsidian is a bunch of directories with text files in them. And the text files are called .md instead of .txt. So the extension's a little different, but they are open. You can open them up as a text file, read them as a text file, and they're human legible. One of the real features of Markdown that is great is, as you saw, when I switched it over into Markdown, it's just as readable, right? It is easy to read as it is when it's fully rendered because Markdown is very lightweight, right? Markdown has this wonderful feature of being human readable and machine readable all inside of a text file. So very, very powerful stuff and allows you to write down game notes, write down, keep a scratch pad that you're using at your game during your digital games and keep those files around, back them up, keep them forever. And you know that later on, you're not going to have to worry about, oh man, I was using this special thing. All my stuff was in Evernote. And now I have to convert it all from Evernote to other stuff. Pain in the ass. The nice thing about text files, you never have to convert them. They are already at the file format that you need in order to convert to anything else. So one of the other features of text files that I think is important, and I've talked about this before too, about the stack that we use when we're doing games. And I've talked to GMs who are really wrapped around a single interface to run their games, right? They use a single virtual tabletop. Like a lot of people that I've been talking to are using Foundry. And I've heard people say, if I couldn't use Foundry, I couldn't run RPGs, right? Somebody that I know and respect said that recently. And that hurts a little bit because it means that what if it stops working for you, right? What happens? And there's something about the idea of, and I really think I subscribe. I'm not saying anybody who's using a VTT as a single platform and loves it that way doesn't want to change. Hey, if it's working for you, it's working for you, right? But there's a brittleness that comes from building around an entire system and knowing that it has to work around that system. For example, I know in Foundry, you can't easily take monsters from the Tales of the Valiant Monster Vault and use them in your D&D 2024 game. I have no problem with that. Right? I have no difficulty when I'm running online games of bringing in any monster from any source I have because I don't use the monsters inside the virtual tabletop. I don't use the stat blocks inside the virtual tabletop. I just pull out the book and I look at the stat block in the book. And we use the virtual tabletop only for moving tokens around on a map. That's all we use it for. I use text files in order to track things like initiative, in order to track marching order, in order to track other stuff. And I tell you, it is super fast to use that stuff. And then, what about sharing? Well, to share, you copy it and you paste it in Discord and they can see it in the Discord. You can paste it in any chat window that you're using that other people have access to. I think there's a real value in splitting apart the different tools that we use to run our online games. I'm not saying anyone who doesn't do that is wrong, but I think it's a perspective, I think that there's a perspective that we can take. And I know that I find a lot of value and a lot of flexibility that I gain by splitting out all of my digital tools into different parts. And one of those major digital tools that I use in a different part are text files and my text editors. Now I'm using like BB Edit on my Mac to do text editing, but I could use 50 other text editors and it wouldn't be any different. I sometimes use Obsidian because I already have my notes in Obsidian, and I just add more stuff to the bottom of my notes, right? So you can use anything. I don't feel like, oh, if I stopped using Obsidian, I'm totally hosed. No, I can just find some other text editor to use. The same way when it comes to like using the virtual tabletop component. I use Owlbear Rodeo 2.0, but I actually have a version of Owlbear Rodeo 1.0 that I could run off of my little Raspberry Pi over there. I could switch to that. Foundry has a very basic version of Foundry. I forget what they call it, but there's like a default installation of Foundry that's really just like tokens and maps, right? And it's a little harder to drop a token on there because you still have to create an actor for each token. It expects you have stat blocks and stuff like that, but I don't think it's too hard. And then you just don't have to worry about having the monsters. You could literally, and I do this for every online game I run, I have the physical book of monsters in front of me. But really what I'm talking about here, and the main thing I want you to take away from this whole thing is the power of using text files to help us run our games online. Very, very powerful tool, super lightweight, been around forever, super ubiquitous, transfers between machines, is as flexible as the humble index card. Many GMs have talked about the value that index cards play in there. They can use it for so many different things. I think I have an article about like 10 uses for index cards. And the truth is that, off the top of my head, I have 6 uses for text files for running our game. So next time you're thinking about a tool that you want to help you track your game, take a look at using text files. Every quarter on the Sly Flourish Patreon, we have a new Patreon Q&A. Every month, patrons can ask a RPG-related question over there. Every Friday, I go and answer all of the questions that people have asked. Some of those questions I bring here so we can dive into them and talk about them more on the show. The first question is from Mr. Smith. Just purchased the Lazy DM's Companion, and I'm excited to use it at my upcoming games. I'm a little confused about what to do with the Keep adventure scenario, having not seen the film it's based on. What are some ways that you can use this scenario to the fullest? Here is the Lazy DM's Companion, the new no background version, and we are going to go down to the Keep. The Keep is, it's not the most well-known story in the world. Michael Mann directed the movie. I forget the name of the author. My dad, the agent that my dad had when he wrote the book Illuminatus, is the same agent as F. Paul Wilson, something like that. Same agent who did The Keep, interestingly enough. So I have another connection to The Keep. So you don't need to have seen the movie to understand the general idea of the Keep or to make the most out of this scenario. By the way, Lazy DM's Companion has like a bunch of these different kinds of scenarios, sort of these main themes for adventures that can work particularly well and offer lots of options and lots of agency to characters. That's why we picked them. The example here, the main thing going on here is that there is a creature, some kind of creature or entity that is trapped. It has been trapped by some kind of group or power or something like that. And in this scenario, there is an entity that exists. There's a prison where it has been imprisoned. There are people who are trying to break it free. There might be people who are trying to serve it. And then there's the characters who have to decide what they want to do with this entity. So the idea behind here is there's a very powerful creature, and we have a list of 20 of them. It could be a hunting revenant, a cursed mummy, a demon lord, an undead dragon, or something like that. It is trapped somewhere. It could be trapped in an ancient keep, or a dreamscape, or a dwarven citadel, a cooled volcano, an old mine, a deserted island, or something like that. You have groups who are trying to break it free. These could be dedicated cultists, innocent children, demonic thralls, devilish servants, power-hungry nobles. Somebody else is trying to break it free. You have relics of fear. And this is an interesting one. I forgot that I had this. A powerful relic that the entity fears. So you have something, this is right. This is right out of the Keep. In the Keep, there is a sword that the creator of the Keep, or it's like a talisman that the creature, that's an anathema to the creature. So you can have an item that the characters might need to acquire in order to either defeat or banish or re-trap this creature that might be getting free. Bestial claw, a flaming blade, a sun blade, a binding cage, an ancient censer, or something like that. And then you have creatures which serve the entity. These may be similar to the breakers, but sometimes the breakers might just be ignorant soldiers, which was really the case in the movie The Keep. And the servitors are like supported directly. And these might be doom-touched wizards, deadly traps, devoted cultists, abyssal beasts, unerring constructs, undead, things like that. So that way you have a number of different factions of groups that are dealing with this thing. And one of the fun bits of the keep is that you don't know, the players have to make a choice. Do we also want to have it released so that we can beat its ass and kill it? That's one option. Do we need to just re-trap it? Or do we need to stop people from releasing it in the first place, right? There's lots of different options that the characters might have with this. And one of the tricks is making sure, and this is why we have both breakers and servitors, is that you still want to have antagonists that you face. Even if you never release the thing, you want to know that you've got other groups that you have to face. So I think it's a really fun scenario, and you really don't need to see the movie. The movie is a fantastic movie, by the way. The movie is about a keep. I forget where it's located, but Nazis show up at this ancient keep. The keep is holding some kind of powerful creature at bay. And the Nazis, of course, screw up and start to release the creature. And then they bring in this old sage, played by Ian McKellen, to kind of tell them what this power is. And Ian McKellen makes a deal with it to go fight the Nazis. Really fun story, really. And then there's a whole, another being that's trying to saying, no, you can't release this thing. It's too evil. Really fun movie. I highly recommend it. And it's old. It's an old movie, right? So it's a little dated in its look, but I think it's really fun. And yeah, so I think that's the main idea to keep is you're setting up this scenario. Creature is trapped. You have groups that are trying to break it free, either purposefully or because they're dumb. You have another groups that sort of serve it. You have an item that it fears, and you have a location where it is, and you put those together, and you have this nice scenario that you can run. TJB says, I tried Shadowdark after you spoke about it on the podcast and thoroughly enjoyed it. The more I've gotten into it, the more I find myself wishing there was a Mike Shea of Shadowdark who made different tools, encounter building benchmarks, random generators, etc. for the system. I'm really missing the lazy GM benchmark for creating counters and scenarios. Shadowdark is really lacking a resource in this department. Do you have any plans to create tools for Shadowdark in the future? Or do you know who the Mike Shea of Shadowdark might be for these resources? I will give you a big indicator. The fact that I have not created tools like this generally means I don't feel like it needed tools like this. So I actually disagree with the idea that it's really missing in this department, and I will show you. It's easy to miss, but my feeling is that the Shadowdark core book has almost everything that you're talking about, or the style of game that you run with Shadowdark is different enough that you don't need those kinds of things. So here's the Shadowdark core book. So one thing you talk about is random generators. Ooh. The Shadowdark core book has tons of random generators in it. It's got piles and piles and piles. Let me get down to it. But it's got so many random, one thing I love is like all the spells are random. Almost every table that's in here has a die roll associated with it, which I think is fantastic. But also most of the book, random table, much of the book, big sections of the book have random tables for random encounters, hazards, traps, treasure, rumors, adventure generators, NPCs. This book is packed with random tables. Party names, NPC names in a couple different ways. So there's a ton of random tables in here. I certainly don't think that you're lacking in any random tables here. And I don't feel like it needed more because to me that indicator was I ran a year-long campaign book and I pretty much, campaign, and I used this book exclusively. Like I really didn't feel like I needed much else when it came to this. I did not feel like I needed to make a bunch of tools for it because I felt like it really had all of the tools that I needed. So you brought up the lazy encounter benchmark in particular. So here's all like the different, castle district encounters, caverns, caves, deep tunnels, like tons of random tables in here. The book's just packed with them. Like, look, it just goes on and on and on, right? Tons of stuff. But then, and there is one thing that the book does lack, but there is a Mike Shea of Shadowdark who created a tool for that I'm going to talk about. You probably already know who I'm talking about. But this is right down here, this tiny little table on page 193, the how many monsters section and the tiny table. And it talks about what level a monster should be compared to the level of a character, generally speaking. Right? And this is really a key thing about Shadowdark. Shadowdark's math is really flat. And also the style of game that Kelsey was capturing with Shadowdark does not lend itself to building encounters in a very specific way. Encounters are really intended to be organic. They're intended to fit what happens in the game. You're intended to roll dice a lot of times to determine the number of monsters and things like that. So you're not really looking for a general benchmark, but there is one. And the benchmark that is down Markdown here it really kind of works. They have sort of like when is a monster, and it even says this, like, use the one-on-one monster table to determine what level a monster should be when there is one of that monster per character. This will result in combat of an average difficulty. Right? And so if you have a character of level 0 to 3, a first level monster is going to be about right. If they're 4 to 6, a third level monster, 7 to 9, a fifth level monster, and 10 is a seventh level monster. But obviously there are monsters that go way above and below that. One very quick benchmark you could do, which is very similar to the lazy encounter benchmark as far as like, hey, when are things going to be deadly, is the encounter could be deadly if the total of monster levels is equal to the total of character levels. Because monsters have levels in here, it's very easy to compare monster level to character level. They're generally equal. And here you can see that for an average difficulty, the monster level is usually lower than the character level, right? First, third, fifth, seventh, instead of, the average of, third is rough, for fifth, and 8 is 5, and 10 is 7. So for an average difficulty, the monsters would be a few levels lower than the characters, right? Assuming you had about a number of monsters equal to the number of characters. But it would be a difficult encounter if the characters and the monsters are equal level. And that's kind of how you can use the general benchmark, is a monster of one level is roughly equivalent to a character of that same level. Very, very easy. And again, you can sort of extrapolate that from this one section in the book on how many monsters. But this really is what Kelsey wanted to say. Like when you read the 4 paragraphs that are here and look at that table, that's really the lazy encounter benchmark. And that's really all you need. And it's very simple to use. And I use this generally because most of the time I wasn't building encounters. The scenes were happening and situations are coming up. I had third level characters that faced a dragon. I had all, up and down and, lots of monsters and few monsters. And this really talks about all that kind of stuff. But you're not really building encounters. And instead, what you're doing is letting the situations generate the encounters. And the intention, I believe, with Shadowdark is really to let those encounters build organically and roll with what happens. There are a couple other variables worth considering when you're running it, which is things like the distance and morale and other sorts of things that you roll on for monsters. Is that behavior, attitude, hostility, activity, morale. These are other rolls that you should be making to determine, even though you ran into monsters and even there might be a lot of them, they might not be interested in the characters or aware of the characters, or they're far away from the characters. There's lots of different circumstances that can change the difficulty of an encounter beyond just the monsters, right? There's distance, activity, and reaction are 3 tables. They're right in the back of the book. And they tell you, like, using these on top of what monsters you roll and on top of the encounters you roll could dramatically change the threat of that potential encounter, right? Especially if they're friendly. They're friendly and they're eating, or they're friendly and they're sleeping. Well, then they're not very dangerous, right? Friendly bears that are sleeping are not very dangerous. So what's the one thing that I feel like the core book does not have that is really valuable? And who is the Mike Shea of Shadowdark who dealt with that? And the answer to that is where is it? It is Creating and Adapting Shadowdark Monsters by Michael Putlick at Night Noon Games. Michael Putlick works on the operations side of Arcane Library with Kelsey, and he put together a guide called Creating and Adapting Monsters for Use in Shadowdark, which includes a mini bestiary. And I have referred to this, and I think he quoted me on when he ran a crowdfunding campaign for it, as this is the Forge of Foes for Shadowdark. It is a guide that helps you build monsters for Shadowdark. It includes tables for them. It talks about the deconstruction. It talks about conversion of monsters. But I think probably the most valuable thing is being able to quickly build monsters for Shadowdark. It's got lots of different options for them. It's got this mini bestiary that you have here. But really, it's giving you guidelines for how to build monsters for Shadowdark. How many hit points do you give it? What kind of armor class do you give it? Here's the table, the quick combat statistics. You want a monster of any given level. You pick the level, you have all the stuff that you need in order to fill it out. So this is called Creating and Adapting Shadowdark Monsters by Michael Putlick. It is available on itch.io. I will link down to in the show notes, a very valuable resource for Shadowdark. I did not have this when I was running it. I would totally have a copy. I think I have a copy right over there. He sent me a copy. And it's something I would definitely bring along with my Shadowdark game. Braden M says, I'm coming up on making my first medium/large dungeon, and I don't really understand how to stock a dungeon. Is there an equivalent to the Lazy DM Deadly Encounter benchmark for the dungeon overall? Or any guidance you can give about how many CR of monsters to scatter around? Bonus question, that's 2 questions. The same question, but for ups rather than downs, treasure, resting places, etc. I want it to be a challenge, but not a slog. So my answer is to not worry about stocking things room by room. We were just talking about Justin Alexander's video where he talked about corridors and writing down corridor themes that you could call upon when you're running it. I think you can do that for your medium and large dungeon as well. Instead of stocking the dungeon by putting monsters in particular rooms, you can instead keep a list of the monsters that make sense for that particular area of a dungeon. If it's a multi-level dungeon, maybe it's the monsters per level. If it's different sections of a dungeon, maybe you write down the list of monsters per that section. You could even make a tiny little random list, like six monster types that they might run into, and then you could roll a die to determine what you want. You can also decide that the number of monsters they might run into can fluctuate depending on a few things. What makes sense in the story and what makes for the best pacing for the game. If the characters have been facing a lot of really hard foes and they've been having a difficult time with it, then maybe you want to give them an easier battle or an easier situation of dealing with only a couple, just so that they have a little bit of a rest. They're not facing one hard battle right after another. So I really like the idea of writing down themes. There isn't a general, the benchmark is not intended to give you a hard rule about how many CRs of monsters you run in an encounter. Instead, we use the lazy encounter benchmark to just keep a gauge in our head to make sure that a battle isn't inadvertently deadly. We might decide that given the circumstances, a battle is above the benchmark anyway. We might also know that our characters are able to handle things way higher than the benchmark regardless, so we go ahead and throw more monsters in there if we want to. But it's not really there, and it's certainly not mathematically sound enough to like spread out the challenge rating. There's something that a lot of GMs are looking for, and that is the encounters per day. Like how many total encounters of what difficulties should the characters face in a given day? I am not a big believer in the idea of worrying about the number of encounters per day. I think it's worth keeping a general idea on the amount of resources that the characters have burned up so you don't burn out too many. But I don't think I don't really like the idea of like setting up encounters that's specifically designed to like drain the resources of the characters so that they don't have such an easy time in a final battle or something like that. I think that's a little too gamified for me. Instead, the benchmark is really there just to tell us, hey, did I go overboard? Otherwise, you just run the number of monsters that feels right based on two variables. What makes sense in the situation and what's fun for the game. If what makes sense for the situation is there's a whole bunch of hobgoblins that are doing a bunch of training, then have them do a bunch of training. But if you go like, oh my God, they're going to walk in there, it's going to be a huge fight. Maybe they're all asleep or they're all playing cards somewhere else, or a lot of them went on patrol, or they just ate poisoned food and they're all feeling really bad, right? You get to decide, you can decide based on what makes sense in the world, and then what you think is fun. But only when you think like, I wonder if this is going to be really hard for them. Then you run the benchmark in order to tell yourself, did I go too far? Are there too many monsters in here? Should I be aware of the fact that there are too many monsters or they're too powerful for the characters that are running? That's really the benchmark. Hanging on to the math of the benchmark too closely is kind of missing the point that, at least the way that I run it, and since you're talking about it here, is I think we want to give ourselves options to piece together encounters based on the situation in the world and based on what's fun for the game when we're running the game, rather than trying to pre-plan everything. And I think that's a big feature when you're talking about stocking a dungeon, that instead of stocking a dungeon atomically by, this room has 3 bugbears playing cards, this one has 5 bugbears that are sleeping, this one has 3 goblins that are harassing a warg. Instead, you have bugbears and goblins and wargs and, whatever, and you write them in a list. And then when the characters are exploring, then you say, I think it'd be interesting if we had 2 goblins in this room or a bunch of bugbears, and maybe they overheard the character, so maybe they're readying an ambush, right? You let the situation evolve depending on what's going on instead of worrying about stocking individual rooms. So, Braden, I hope that answers your question. Friends, I want to thank all of you for hanging out with me today while we talked about all things in tabletop role-playing games. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, and you want more stuff like this from me, the best thing you can do is subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter. There is a link down in the show notes. It is absolutely free to sign up. You get a free adventure generator with a mini RPG in it for signing up, and you get a weekly RPG-related email that has links to all of the other stuff that I do. You can also support me directly on Patreon. Patrons get access to things like the 5e Artisanal database. They get access to a whole bunch of different scenarios, adventures, tips, tricks, other tools, the Patreon Q&A database, the talk show database, lots of different ways to get access to all of the stuff that I've put out there. Patrons get access to a ton of different stuff. It's very reasonably priced. And you can pick up any of my books, including The Lazy DM's Companion, which we're just taking a look at, City of Archers, which is now available worldwide, Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, my book to help GMs run their games, and more at the Sly Flourish Bookstore. Links for all of those in the show notes. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and get out there and play an RPG.